Brodes Media.
This was the Joel Embiid show tonight, of course, and I love the fact that this team put him in great positions to have that success. Now, Joel's Joel. Let's not take that out of context, but I thought when you think about the help, we've been pretty much arguing as of late about getting him the basketball, and it's not as easy as it should be, and he has to work a little bit harder than over a 48-minute span. Working that extra time each possession will then end up with a full body of, okay, that's a lot. It's a lot more than I need to do. Let's help out the big fella. Let's help out this superstar. I think as a team, they did a good job at just allowing Joel Embiid to get to certain areas on the floor and letting him go to work. There was one miscommunication that stood out to me the most because I'm not accustomed to this yet, and that's the behind-the-back pass that James Harden tried to Joel, a little behind the back pass that resulted in a turnover. But let's be realistic. You throw a new primary point guard on the floor, and we really haven't seen that yet to this point, so it's pretty crazy. It took that long for it to be that eye-popping to me. But the end of the first quarter, I thought was really important to the Sixers, pretty much going in cruise control and just taking this victory, no doubt. Joel Embiid goes on a bit of a personal run, which was sensational. But then you had James Harden with a step back. Yeah, George Niang with a couple threes. Danny Green got a three after a DeAndre Jordan offensive board. And speaking of offensive boards, there were some miserable box out attempts by the Sixers, specifically Tobias Harris. And he was definitely putrid, no doubt about it. Once again, okay, he had the slam, but the big picture is Tobias Harris continues to struggle. Now, Doc Rivers keeps bringing up the fact that he believes by the end of this, these open looks will eventually fall. I understand what he's saying, and I tend to believe that that's a fair way to assess the situation. But here's what does kind of blow my mind a bit about the Tobias Harris experience. This team has not lost yet with James Harden in the lineup. And if you look at the amount of points that they are scoring as a unit when he is on the floor, it is ridiculously good. They put up 130, 125. They blow teams out by putting up an obnoxious amount of points. And then afterwards, the amount of tweets that I have in my mentions about Tobias, this guy sucks, this guy's awful. This team's not losing. The team is literally not losing and putting up 125 points, putting up an absurd amount of points. And your takeaway after the game is screw Tobias Harris. I think it's fair to bring it up in conversation and say it needs to be better. He can't be shooting this poorly, and this is not what we need from the three-point line from him. But even with him being this dreadful, even with him being this embarrassing, the team is winning all these basketball games, and Tyrese Maxey's getting incorporated into the offense, and even Matisse Thybulle's getting incorporated into the offense. And here's what I'll say about Matisse. I've mentioned this a billion times now about the flaws of everybody else surrounding the big man and James Harden. Your superstar talent can make up for those issues as long as they play their game. And it's clear the threat of James Harden being able to do as much as he possibly can on that floor has opened up the ability for Matisse Thybulle to get these cuts, to get to the basket. And the passes are magnificent too, right on the money, in rhythm, as Matisse Thybulle's doing his thing. Now, there are times where he could do even more. For example, Matisse Thybulle gets to the rim, misses a layup, should have been an easy and one, instead goes to the line, hits one of two. So 3 points ends up turning into 1 point. And there are baskets that I feel he could finish through contact, even though he got to the line. But he hit a big wide open three. Not that I'm a big time believer in this full body of work as a whole. I still have my major concerns. But my point is, when James Harden's out there, Matisse Thybulle becomes such a different player. And that's because your superstar talent rises to the occasion and then puts the stress off of a Thybulle. You saw Thybulle last game compared to this game. It's a totally different beast when there's someone there to settle everything, who can run a half-court set and can allow guys to play differently. It's all due to James Harden and the addition to what he provides from a professionalism level. And yeah, I mean, Matisse Thybulle is able to play better with him out there. And if this is what you can do more times than not, this will work. All I asked for was, if Matisse Thybulle can get you 3 cuts a game, So that's 6 to 8 points-ish. If that's what he gives you on top of stellar defense, now it can't be one of those nights where the Sixers get abused. And by the way, I thought the defense tonight by Joel was obviously noticeable. He was locked and loaded. There was the ankle tweak in the first quarter where he go, oh, no, don't do this to me. And then he left the game for a little bit of time. He returned, but he was nothing short of wow the rest of the way. Wow is right. Tristan Thompson. You're telling me Tristan Thompson looks at himself in the mirror and goes, I love my job. I love what I do. How about the foul when he thinks, hey, coach, I got it. You're a clown. You don't have it. And Joel puts teams into foul trouble. And we always talk about Doc's rotations, right? And I actually liked what Doc did today. Went to Shake Milton. And speaking of that first quarter, Shake Milton. I never even finished my point. Shake Milton ends up hitting a three. He went to Isaiah Joe over Furkan Korkmaz. So we always bash Doc Rivers about the rotation. I like what he did tonight. And what does that mean moving forward? It's still somewhat of an experiment, and he's trying to push certain buttons to see exactly what is going to flow and what he loves best. But Joel Embiid will force teams to have to go 10 deep. 11 deep, because you'll pick up 2 fouls in the first, and now your big man's somebody else, and now you got to go to your backup big, and you hate the matchup, but you have to do it because you already got 2 fouls early in the basketball game. That's the disaster if you're on the opposing sideline, if you're a head coach and you have to push certain buttons. That's the disaster that Joel Embiid brings. 43 points, 14 boards. Okay, he's got 3 blocks. He's got 2 steals. He did it all tonight. And that's why when he gives you 22 or 27 or a lower point scoring total on a random game on a Saturday night or on a Thursday night in the regular season, you go, Joel doesn't look right. Joel doesn't look like he's comfortable. Relax. Joel will be fine. I guarantee you, Joel will be fine. You can't just say, well, one game, uh-oh. Oh, no. No, it's called being a human being. Giannis the other night in the second half wasn't anything that we're used to seeing Giannis do. But sometimes you just have a 3-game span that isn't 40 points. Joel will be okay. And you saw that. He looked locked in. And when Joel Embiid's locked in, good luck. It won't work. The other team, whatever you think your game plan is, it won't work. And that's exactly what we saw by the Sixers tonight. The Bulls, they're so fake. And the Sixers, by the way, I kept telling myself a couple different things because I know how this city reacts game by game and then takes it to a wild extreme. And one of my thoughts were, you beat the Bulls 10 straight times. Eventually, you're going to lose to the Bulls. I hate to break it to you, and I'm not building in an excuse, but at some point, you would think, we're going to lose to the Bulls. You don't beat a team every single time. Every time you play, you just always beat them. Always. No, at some point, it just won't be your night, and the other team might have their night. And then you tip your cap and you move on to the next one. And knowing the Sixers lost to the Heat on a second half of a back-to-back, and it wasn't the most beautiful basketball we've seen, I thought, uh-oh, here we go. You beat them 10 straight times. They do win regular season games, so it's not like they don't win regular season games. The Bulls do. Third game in your fourth night. You know, maybe they're due to a loss to Chicago. That's what I was thinking. Not that it was a built-in excuse, but I love that. You're making excuses, bros. They shouldn't have lost in Miami, or they shouldn't have sat James Harden. It never even crossed my mind that James Harden should have played in Miami. Like, it didn't even come to my brain that the Sixers were screwing this up, and there's no way in hell that they shouldn't have sat James Harden. Of course they should have. I don't give a damn about a Saturday night in March. You think that's what I care about? No, I care about them playing in the playoffs when we're talking about spring basketball with a healthy James Harden. Because a healthy James Harden gives you an offense like this. It gives Matisse Thybulle going from 0 points to double digits. It gets cuts to the basket, and he does his step-back 3, pretends to shoot it, The defender bites, and then there's a wide open guy. And even when the ball did start swinging around the perimeter a bit, right? And Matisse Thybulle was wide open. It's hilarious to watch the defender drawn to the corner, and that was like the ball swinging around the perimeter, and the defender's literally saying, I'm going to skip this portion and go right to the corner, who I believe was Maxey at the time. And Matisse drilled it. Now, I don't anticipate him knocking down a lot of threes, but the cutting is real. The cutting and the moving off ball, I think, could be a sustainable style of offense for the Harden and the Thybulle. And then, of course, Harden and Niang. Those two are working and clicking on all cylinders like no other. Niang is balling right now, and I absolutely love it. And I already see the whole, you should start him and sit Tobias. You don't start role players and think over a 40-minute span it's going to be the same thing. Tobias has to be better. There's no doubt about it. This is not acceptable, and things need to improve out of Tobias Harris. But this is what people do. They fall in love with role players, and then they think you could put role players in higher minutes and give them a different role, and then they would be a same player, the same player with 40 minutes. That's not how it works. Niang right now with Harden, I love that. I love that mix. I love what you found right now between those two and between the rotations and the style of play you're getting. Let's just see where this goes right now instead of overreacting. There's a reason why we're looking at this as you got the back half of the season to play around with options, play around with opportunities, and see exactly what will flow best and what you end up liking by the end. You're still in the experiment mode. I'm okay with still being in the experiment mode. Let's see how it all shapes up from here. But I like the way that things are playing out between them, and they clearly figured something out at this point for sure. Thybulle did end up picking up his third personal foul with 4:41 to go in the second frame, and I don't know what I'm getting out of him at times with that effort. He comes around the screen. He's always doing things from behind defensively, tries to get a steal, ends up getting a reach-in call, and that ends up hurting him at times that he plays that way, but also when he plays that way, that is why he is Matisse Thybulle and causing the havoc that he does. But obviously there's a line, and I've been very vocal about his line. Sometimes I think he gets way too overboard. There's a way to play Matisse Thybulle defensive basketball without picking up those silly fouls at times, and I would have thought by now that maybe it would dwindle in a different direction where I'd be a little bit more comfortable about it. I never know what I'm getting out of him, but I'll always go back to this. They're winning basketball games. They're scoring 120-plus points, 125 points. They're getting the 130 points. They are dominating teams in scoring. And that's what it takes to win a championship. The fact that James Harden makes Thybulle better. The fact that Joel Embiid can give you 40-plus points. This was Harden being okay. But the fact that a James Harden okay game gives you 14 assists, and he's smooth with the offense, and he's finding guys wide open. And I honestly feel that we don't even give it justice until you go back and say, I'm going to study just James Harden. I want to just look at the game with a binocular set on James Harden and what he's providing with these passes. Go back and just look at the passes and what he does for this team. And it puts it into a different perspective. Even when they're showing highlights of them going to commercial break and they're playing the music. Dun, 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 dun. I love when I do that. I don't know why. Dun, 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 dun. And you see a replay in slow-mo, and here's Harden pump fake from three on the step back, and then he throws it over his head, and someone catches, maybe it's Niang wide open, and drills it, and Niang gives you one of those big faces of let's go! And the Wells Fargo Center goes nuts. That's what it's all about. So go back and study just James Harden, and I think it'll give you even a different layer of juice about what he's doing for this team and how everyone is able to get into a comfortable position on the floor, all based off of him. I would love for him to shoot better, but guess what? I think he feels the same way as well, and he knows that there's a different layer to him on that offensive side of the game, no doubt about it. I'm trying to see if there's anything going from the press conferences right now. Sixers Matisse Thybulle said, Joel's pretty impressive every night. I like when he dunks. Yeah, me too. His footwork is outrageous, right? When he's able to get down low and then he does what? 3 different footwork moves? Like he thinks, you think he's going one way, you bite, he goes another way, you bite again, and then he goes back to the original way, or there's somehow a third way to maneuver his body that he gets to the rim. He had one play today where he was getting into the paint area. The pass was, I don't know, 8 feet in front of him, but he somehow catches it and then puts it off the glass and in. Maxey had an acrobatic play as well where he was moving the full length of the court and he's flying at full speed. Couple nice dunks throughout from Thybulle and Tobias. So all around, they saw their opponent and said, screw you, you can't hang with us, and they put that on full display.